Okay, so it's day 300, 300 days since this terrible invasion of Ukraine. And today we're going to talk about Putin particularly and his leadership. We'll compare it with Zelensky, but I really want to focus on Putin and what his processes were and where he is now and what he's going to do in the future. That's really what I want to do today. I'm going to start here with the British intelligence update for today. And they go back a few days and they said a few days ago, President Vladimir Putin visited the joint headquarters of the special military operation. Putin was filmed meeting with a number of senior military officers, including his chief of staff and defense minister, Sergei Shoigu. And then it said down here, in a choreographed meeting, and they generally always are choreographed, like that's the way that they do this. It's a dog and pony show. Putin likely intended to demonstrate collective responsibility for the special military operation. Now that tells me something, because if it was going well, he would take all the glory on himself and all the responsibility on himself. But it's not going that well, and this is a sign. This display likely aimed to deflect Putin's responsibility for military failure, high fatality rates, and increasing public dissatisfaction for mobilization. Well, that's really, really interesting. And so I thought that was a great starting point for what's coming next. I'm only going to go through a handful. I'm going to go through less than a dozen articles today, and I hope that you're willing to stay with me while I go a little bit deeper into some of these articles. So here's the first article. This was in The Guardian. We were allowed to be slaughtered. Calls by Russian forces intercepted. So they intercepted a number of telephone calls between like mobile phones and back home in Russia, and they're fascinating. Okay, so on 8 November, Russian serviceman called. Andre decided to ignore the orders of his superiors and call his mother. Quote, "No one feeds us anything, Mom," he complained. "Our supply is crap. To be honest, we draw water from puddles and then we strain it and drink it." Like, that's where they are. This is bad. So there's a failure of leadership, not from Putin, but from whoever's above him and up that chain that is not allowing him to actually have what he actually needs. The Russian forces had finally started firing at Ukrainian positions with phosphorus bombs, he told his mother, but the promises of munitions that could turn the battle had come to nothing. Wow. Okay. Where are the missiles that Putin boasted about? He asked. There is a high-rise building in front of us. Our soldiers can hit it. We need one caliber cruise missile, and that's it. Well, I'll tell you where those cruise missiles are. They're in Kyiv, because at this point in the war, Putin has changed his strategy from arming and equipping his military to sending those missiles to try to force Kyiv to say uncle. That's what's been going on. Okay, another one on 6 November between a father and the colleagues of his son, Andre, who had been killed serving in the 35th Motorized Rifle Brigade, 5th Company. Reinforcements? No. Communication? No, responded a soldier to questions from the grieving parent about the status of men who had survived a Ukrainian onslaught. They said we weren't allowed to retreat. Otherwise, we may be shot. Okay, you don't need to threaten people that have high morale and good capacity with being shot. You just don't. They will take the fight to the other side, but that's not what's going on here. Okay, third intercept from 26 October. I'm sleeping in a bag, all wet, coughing. We were allowed to be slaughtered, the soldier said. So, and it goes on, and you can actually listen. If you look at this article, you can actually listen to the calls themselves. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, what's going on? There's a failure of leadership. Well, why is there a failure of leadership? It emanates from the top. The top determines very often how the rest of the system works. Newt Gingrich, I don't know that, I only heard it from him first, but I don't know that I've ever heard it anywhere else or who else to attribute it to. But he said this: the system that you have is perfectly geared to give you what you're getting. Does that make sense? So if you have a system that's working well, the system is geared to give you something working well. And if you have one that's all jacked up, it's geared to give you something all jacked up. And that's where we are with the Russian military. Okay, so what's Putin doing? Putin has been over in Belarus. He's been hanging out with Lukashenko, and what they're doing over there is talking about what's going on in the military and their, how they're going to work together for military operation and coordination. And he's in this nice, very secure building in Minsk. Although, if you listen to Anna from Ukraine, and I'm going to show a clip of her. By the way, if you've never seen Anna from Ukraine, watch Anna from Ukraine. I'm going to show a clip of what she's talking about with the difference, the contrast between. But she was talking about, and I'm not going to show this part she was talking about how when Putin flew into Minsk, he flew in, there were 3 different planes, so people wouldn't know which plane he's on. So if anything happened to one, the odds were lower that he's going to get shot down or whatever. He's flying into Minsk. He's flying from Russian airspace into Belarusian airspace to the capital of Belarusia. And or Belarus, it means white Russia, Belarus, and so yeah, that's what's going on there. Okay, at any rate, I'm going to play you a clip of Anna in a little bit, but before I do that, so let's just keep talking about what's going on with Putin and Lukashenko. Lukashenko does not want to enter the war. He may very, very well be pushed to put his army at the border, maybe even to cross over the border, but he does not want to do that, and Putin wants him to be there to at least take some of the pressure off his eastern front. So with that being said, let's listen to Anna and see what she has to say.
Zelensky is a comedian and Putin is a very serious, influential politician, and now it is just on contrary. During this war, Putin is a comedian, an ugly comedian, and Zelensky is the world leader. So what made me think about this comparison once again? The fact that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, visited Bakhmut, and Bakhmut is the hottest zone in front right now. So he visited it to meet with Ukrainian soldiers, to give some medals, to demonstrate his support, and to demonstrate that Bakhmut, which is a very strong fortress, as he said, on the front line, is Ukrainian, and the president of Ukraine is there. I know that it is really dangerous, and believe me, many Russian intelligence services and traitors work to identify the location of Zelensky, but he feels how important it is for the spirit of Ukraine, for the spirit of Ukrainian armed forces, and he travels. I know that he travels by train, and luckily nobody takes pictures of it, nobody describes it. There are different levels of security for that train, and I hope.
Okay, on the other hand, what Putin is doing is flying in incognito into a very safe place from a very safe place, but he's worried about it. Why? What's going on? Well, here Putin awards acting heads of the new regions, while Zelensky is over on the front line, actually mixing with soldiers, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Putin is awarding over 24 people receive state merits from Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. This is from RT. Those recognized, including the acting heads of the former Ukrainian regions that joined Russia. Putin described these individuals honored as being heroes, trailblazers, creators, courageous and industrious people who contributed greatly to the development of the nation, showed their character. Well, they did that in this difficult yet momentous time. The last group included the 4 acting heads of the Donetsk, Luhansk People's Republics, as well as Kherson and Zaporozhye regions. Putin mentioned he regarded all these heroes of the Russian troops. Now, here's what's really, really important. He regarded as heroes all the Russian troops involved in the campaign. Quote, I honestly consider all of them heroes. Every person who bears this heavy, important, and dangerous service, they are at risk every second. Yes, but you're also not treating them right. You might regard them as heroes, but no one's feeding them anything. Their supply is terrible. We have to drink water from puddles and we strain it and drink it because you're not taking care of them. Your chain of command, your system that you have is perfectly geared to give you this. You are not really taking care of these people like you claim to be, or caring about them like you claim to be. Now, in contrast, we see this. This is Zelensky on the front line. He's in Bakhmut. He's handing out awards to these soldiers in the hottest spot of the war right now. Do you see a difference between the leaders? It's actually shocking what a difference it is. And that's why we revere Zelensky. Well, not only what's going on politically, but just as a leader to leader. Putin, it gets very low marks. Zelensky gets very high marks. Okay, about that, let's look at this. As fighting rages in the east, Zelensky marks 300 days of war with a visit to fiercely disputed frontline city. Zelensky made a daring visit to Bakhmut, one of the 2 frontline cities that together with Avdiivka have been the focus of Moscow's months-long offensive. And so that's been raging since the summer now, since at least August, maybe July. Zelensky on December made a surprise visit to Bakhmut. He visited the frontline positions, awarded fighters with medals and valuable gifts. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Minsk with Belarusian strongman Alexander Lukashenko. The two countries will be holding joint military exercises, Putin and Lukashenko said afterward. A little bit at the end, Putin said on December 19th that the situation was extremely difficult. Now, he goes on and he says this: the situation in Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics in the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions is extremely difficult. Now, that's an amazing admission for Putin, who never admits anything like that. So this is something to watch. He's actually admitting that this is a difficult situation. Remember, he thought that he was going to roll over Kyiv and take out Zelensky within the first 3 days. It's 300 days later. So that's really what we got. Okay, a little bit more about what Zelensky said. He told the Ukrainian military in Bakhmut that upon their shoulders rests the defense of the nation. He says, we will see what remains after they pass. Nothing alive. The question is not in Donbass. You protect the entire Ukraine. After Donbass, they will do the same to other cities. They don't want anything Ukrainian. The defense of Donbass, the defense not of Donbass, but the entire Ukraine rests upon your shoulders. I wish you steadfastness with which you live and win. History remembers only the winners, the strong and the brave. He said, while he was physically there. See, that's the difference between being safely ensconced hundreds of miles away. It's kind of like when he said, I need ammunition. I just happened to wear this shirt today, and I realized I was wearing it just now. When he said, I need ammunition, not a ride. If he had said that from a hotel in the safety of Paris somewhere, this would not be a conversation that we were having right now. But because he was willing to stand and be counting when he knew he was target number one. That's why we're at day 300 now, and Ukraine still has a chance. That's why the glory and freedom of Ukraine has not yet perished, because of that kind of bravery. Okay, let me continue. Now, again, the contrast. Putin admits that it's a complicated situation in Russian-occupied Ukraine. Vladimir Putin's made a rare admission of his country's military challenges, and it is a rare admission because he can't help but try to project strength, as if projecting strength is the same thing as being strong. In a video message addressed to Russia's security services, Putin said that the situation in the 4 occupied Ukrainian regions was extremely complicated and urged security agencies to intensify their efforts to identify traitors, spies, and diversionists. Well, maybe you want to start with taking care of your actual troops that are suffering on the front line because you haven't equipped them. You failed job number 1 as a leader. Moscow's growing acknowledgement that the war in Ukraine is not going to plan. Earlier this month, the Russian leader said the conflict in Ukraine could turn into a long-term process. It is. It's a long-term process. It's far longer than he ever thought it was going to be. Putin's message on Tuesday came hours before Zelensky's office announced that the Ukrainian leader made a surprise visit to the embattled city of Bakhmut, where the fighting rages the hottest. The battle for Bakhmut is also a key test for Wagner head Prigozhin. Now, this is really also an interesting point. The city's capture by Russia would increase Prigozhin's political standing as he seeks a more prominent position in the country's decision-making process. That, I think, is why. Now, there's also pride on the line. They talk about this as well. There's a psychological significance to what's going on in Bakhmut, but that's why they keep pressing in Bakhmut, because what does Prigozhin care about his soldiers? Just send them into the battle. Go take that city, right? The city's capture would increase Prigozhin's political standing as he seeks more prominent position in the country's decision-making process. If Bakhmut were to fall, military observers have said that Ukraine could fall back to the west without suffering heavy strategic defeats, but a retreat from the city might suggest that Kyiv's military efforts were running out of steam. So there's a little bit on the line, but not a lot. But they keep going at Bakhmut because it's Prigozhin's ego, Prigozhin's standing, his place. It's just like at work, a bad manager trying to use his people in order to make his own name great. That's what we see throughout the system. The system that you have is perfectly geared to give you what you're getting. Okay, now, this was an interesting article. Post-Soviet Russia is dead. Now, this was a professor, a research professor at the Higher School of Economics. And now he says, to describe in one word, and I'd like you to do this, describe in one word what 2022 has been for Russia. Please go ahead and do that. Put that in the comments now. Okay, I would say transformative. I wouldn't say that. If you're saying that's transformative, it's like transformative the wrong direction. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine is not a minor operation. That's what they said it was in the very beginning. Even after only 10 months, its impact appears to be far bigger than that of the Crimean War in the mid-19th century. Wow, it's amazing that he raised the Crimean War. I talked about Crimea in one of the explainers. And I would highly recommend that you watch this video that I'm going to put at the end about the Crimean War if you have not watched that, because this goes back into some history and it helps you understand that, like, the history and the context of what we're dealing with, particularly with the Russian mindset and the land. So please watch that. But that was amazing that he said that. But this idea that this has been a transformative, a great thing, no, it's been awful for Russia. Russia is imploding in front of our eyes. I don't mean that they can't still do damage, but they're degrading themselves daily. It's getting worse and worse and worse, to the point that 2 days ago, was it, that I looked at the South China Morning Post, and the Chinese were saying, yeah, we got a plan for what it's going to be like when Russia, with a lower stature, is done with this war, right? Like, they're thinking, yep, China's raising, actually, China's just staying like this, and Russia's doing that. That's what's happening here. Okay. But Putin is thinking long term, and he has to be thinking long term. And the ISW is confirming that he's thinking long term. U.S. public policy, this is today's. U.S. public policy should recognize that the Kremlin's intent regarding Ukraine is maximalist. They want all of it. They want to wipe it out. Inflexible, and they will not change in the foreseeable future. The West should stop expending resources trying to change a reality it does not control and focus on what it can shape. It goes down a little bit further. Russian President Vladimir Putin, his intent is toward Ukraine, has not changed and likely never will. Putin's intent will most likely outlast him by design. Russia will use any territory it keeps in Ukraine to stage future attacks. This is why they have to be defeated. This is why saying, I need ammunition, not a ride, was a thing, because he recognizes this threat is not going away. If you declare peace now, it's just going to come back later. Okay. I'm done with my filibustering. Just one last thing, actually two last things. I'm going to show you a meme after this. I urge you to support Ukraine. Now, my daughter bought me this shirt like a month into the war, maybe 2 months in, and so that's what I'm wearing. I urge you to go buy something, find something that you can identify with Ukraine, show your support to others. Baseball cap, a mug, something. Just do something. I don't care what the something is. Could be as simple as your phone case, whatever it is. Identify with the people of Ukraine, support the people of Ukraine in whatever way that you see possible, or whatever fits you. I have links to this below. If you buy anything from here, you're supporting a Ukrainian businessman. If you don't want to do that, you won't hurt my feelings. Give money to Samaritan's Purse, which will be a legitimate organization funding into Ukraine. Don't want to do that? Fund it wherever you want. Just do something, be helpful. It's Christmas. I mean, we're a week from Christmas, and this is still going on. I want to show you one last thing, and this is, I think, my favorite meme of all of the memes that I've seen throughout the war. Here we go. It's this. I think this is actually right. The top is what Putin intended, and the bottom is kind of what's happened to him. And he didn't realize that was what's going to happen to him when he started. But 300 days later, we can say that's kind of what's been going on. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.